aeroplane actually is a non-navalised Sea Fury. It was actually built for the Iraqi Air Force, was delivered to them in the late 40s. But it's not a particularly nice colour scheme if you're a British aviation enthusiast, so the owner decided he wanted something a bit more British and appropriate. And as you see, those yellow undersides, they are a classic of the World War II years, that they were all the prototype aircraft under test were painted yellow, presumably so you could keep well clear of them in case they disassembled themselves in the air. You'll also see it has a yellow P painted on the side. That again says that the aircraft is a prototype. It's not appropriate to this aeroplane. I say it's designed for or built for the Iraqi Air Force, but I say it's just more appropriate for our airshow visitors. Paul demonstrating in a derry turn there how fabulous the ailerons on this aircraft are. Most aircraft have conventional ailerons where your control stick is connected by a system of pulleys and cables to the actual ailerons themselves. But it means when the aircraft is flying extremely fast, you've got to have a fair set of muscles because you're pushing those controls against the airflow. And at 400 miles an hour, it can almost feel like it's stuck in concrete. Showing those beautifully precise ailerons. In this aeroplane, the ailerons are actually connected to the trim tabs, which are small surfaces on the back end of the ailerons. And it's actually moving the control stick, moves the tabs, and the tabs themselves move the ailerons. Fairly new for the end of the Second World War period, but have been used. They were used on some of the early jets as well. But just means that the controls are actually just as effective at 400 miles an hour as they were at 200 miles an hour, without having to have Arnold Schwarzenegger's biceps to operate them. To actually get to fly this aircraft this year. Typically a British aeroplane, you get into it, it's very big on the outside and very small on the inside. It's a reverse TARDIS like most British aeroplanes, and a little bit better than the early Hurricanes as far as ergonomics goes, so the actual way the cockpit is laid out to a pilot is very important. This is pretty good. And as you see Paul rolling the aeroplane, if you look at the cockpit, again it's a bit like the Bearcat, it's sat right high on top of the fuselage with a sloping forward fuselage going down to the engine, so the view over the nose of the aircraft is very, very good compared with most Second World War aeroplanes. And of course, this being a carrier designed aeroplane, that's again a very important thing to have. So the pilot Paul Bonham showing his amazing skills. I think Paul started flying, he was at what's called a dongler. He was around White Waltham Airport as a teenager, and he used to cadge rides in aircraft while he was cleaning the hangar and pushing aircraft out and refueling them. And he took that into a very early career in commercial aviation. He was one of British Airways' very youngest captains in his late 20s, having started his career flying King Airs. Paul is still an active pilot with British Airways. Well, reasonably active, he's part-time, but he has to fit these things in. Paul lives quite near to Duxford. He's got 4 kids, and a very, very, shall we say, understanding wife. And Paul has been flying warbirds since his, again, late 20s. I was actually in the crew room in Berlin. I also flew for British Airways, and Paul came excitedly in and said, "Guess who just rang me up?" And it was the chief pilot of the fighter collection who gave him a pilot's notes for a P-40 and said, "Would you like to fly our aircraft?" And he's been flying them now for nearly 30 years. Now Paul reefing it round there in a very tight high G turn, rolling out on the finals. Let's see what's next. Possibly a roll maybe, or just a flyby. Let's have a look. Looks like a wave goodbye. Superb display, Paul. And having had the engine up at quite high power settings, Paul will now do a nice slow circuit to let the engine cool down uniformly. big engines don't like to be suddenly shut off, so he's going to go climb up, gradually bring the power back, slow the aeroplane down, let the engine cool down. And as I said, because it's designed for carrier landings, it's got a very good approach view. And also when you see it coming into land, you'll see the enormous amount of flap the aircraft has.